My name is Daniel, I'm 32 years old, and I've been married to Sarah for almost 7 years. We live in a small town, surrounded by family and friends, and I always thought we had the perfect life. I'm a teacher, and Sarah works as a marketing consultant. We don't have kids yet, but we've talked about it, just haven't gotten around to it yet, with everything going on. In the beginning, everything seemed perfect. Sarah and I met in college, and we were inseparable from the start. We both had the same sense of humor, shared dreams, and enjoyed the simple things in life. My best friend, Mark, was also a huge part of our lives. We'd known each other since high school, and he was basically family. He was the best man at our wedding, and we did everything together. But sometimes, life throws curveballs, and one of those curveballs came in the form of a revelation that I never saw coming. A revelation that would change everything. It started with a conversation. A casual dinner with Sarah, me, and Mark at our favorite Italian restaurant. It was nothing out of the ordinary, just 3 old friends catching up, enjoying a good meal. But as we were finishing our main course, Mark looked at me, then at Sarah, his face suddenly serious. It caught my attention. Mark was never serious. He was the kind of guy who could make you laugh even during the darkest times. Daniel, Mark said, pausing as if carefully choosing his words, I need to talk to you about something. My heart skipped a beat. I felt a knot form in my stomach, not knowing where this conversation was going. Sarah looked at me, raising an eyebrow. What's up? I asked, trying to sound calm, though I could feel the tension creeping in. Mark shifted in his seat, his eyes flicking between Sarah and me. It's about something personal. Something I've been carrying for a while now. He looked directly at Sarah, then back at me. I could feel the shift in the air, the atmosphere turning thick with uncertainty. Sarah gave me a confused look, but I didn't know what to say. Mark wasn't the kind of guy to make things dramatic for no reason. Mark started, his voice breaking slightly. I think I've fallen in love with Sarah. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind went blank, the fork I was holding dropping from my hand onto the plate. I could feel my face heat up, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't breathing for a moment. Mark, what are you talking about? I stuttered, my voice shaking. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide with shock, her hand instinctively reaching for mine across the table. She, too, was silent, probably processing what she just heard. Mark looked down at his hands, clearly struggling. I know this is unexpected, Daniel. I never meant for this to happen. But I've been feeling this way for a while now. And I just couldn't keep it to myself anymore. It was as if the world around me had stopped moving. I didn't know what to say. Sarah seemed equally at a loss for words. The tension was unbearable, suffocating. The days that followed felt like a haze. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Mark tried to reach out to me several times, but I didn't want to talk to him. How could I? My best friend, someone I trusted with everything, was in love with my wife. Sarah and I had long talks, sometimes staying up late into the night, trying to make sense of what had happened. She swore she hadn't encouraged him, that she never felt the same way. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been off for a while. I couldn't ignore the way they'd exchange looks when they thought I wasn't watching, the way they'd laugh at private jokes that I wasn't a part of. For days, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My relationship with Sarah, which had always been my anchor, suddenly felt fragile. I kept questioning everything, every conversation, every moment we shared. Had there always been a deeper connection between her and Mark that I never noticed? Or was this something that had just happened out of nowhere? The worst part. I didn't know how to confront Mark. I didn't want to lose him as a friend, but how could I ever look at him the same way again? A week later, Mark showed up at our house unannounced. Sarah wasn't home, and I had just gotten back from work. I didn't want to face him, but there he was, standing in my living room, looking more anxious than I'd ever seen him. "I know you're angry," he said, not even bothering with a greeting. "But I had to see you. We need to talk, Daniel." I stood there, frozen, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to shout at him, tell him to leave, but instead, I did the opposite. I asked him to sit down. "You think I'm just going to forgive you for what you said? For what you feel?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, heavy with emotion. "I never wanted to hurt you, man. You've been my best friend for years. But I can't lie anymore. I love Sarah. And I know it's wrong, but I can't deny it." There was an unbearable silence between us. I didn't know whether to punch him, cry, or walk away. Instead, I stood there, trying to hold it together. Then, as if it wasn't enough, Mark dropped another bombshell. "She knows, Daniel. Sarah knows." I froze. My heart stopped. "What do you mean? What do you mean she knows?" Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I told her, a few days ago. She's confused. She doesn't know how to feel either." I felt my world tilt. Sarah had known, and she hadn't told me. In that moment, I was broken. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask Sarah why she hadn't told me the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed silent, my eyes burning with unshed tears. Later that night, when Sarah came home, I confronted her. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked. "Why didn't you tell me, Sarah? Why didn't you tell me what Mark said?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Daniel. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. I'm not in love with him, but I was confused. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her. But the doubt that had started growing in my chest was now a heavy weight, one I couldn't ignore. I felt betrayed. Not just by Mark, but by Sarah too. "I don't know if I can forgive either of you," I whispered. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." The strain between Sarah and me was undeniable. It wasn't just us anymore, our families noticed. My parents, who had always supported Sarah as if she were their own daughter, were concerned. Sarah's parents, who adored me, had started to pull away, unsure of how to handle the situation. And then there were our friends, who all knew Mark, too. Some reached out to me privately, expressing sympathy, while others simply stayed out of it, not knowing how to support me in the midst of this mess. I couldn't blame them for staying away, but I felt so alone. I didn't know who I could trust anymore, and that hurt more than anything. As time went on, things didn't get any easier. I couldn't say I'd forgiven Mark or Sarah, but I also couldn't let go of the life we had built together. The love I felt for Sarah was still there, but the betrayal lingered in the background, casting a shadow over everything. We never had a clear resolution. Sarah and I decided to take some time apart to figure things out. Mark, too, stayed away, respecting our space, though I could tell it was tearing him apart. Would we ever go back to being the happy couple we once were? Would Mark and I ever rebuild our friendship? The answers weren't clear. Maybe they never would be. And maybe, that's what made it so painful. What would you do in this situation? Could you forgive your best friend and your partner for something like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let's continue to have these conversations, because sometimes, talking it out is the first step toward healing.